So today I'm talking about an experience with an ex-boyfriend, and I know so many women, friends, strangers alike, who all have some kind of horror story when it comes to men and past relationships. Often when I share my story about my ex-boyfriend, people are very shocked and they can't believe what I went through, and then others find it quite relatable. So that's what I wanted to do today, share it with you. Hopefully there are some of you out there who find it relatable. Perhaps there are some of you who've had a similar experience but are too scared to talk about it with somebody. So hopefully you will find this video comforting in some way, and I will start my story now. So when I was at university, I was very excited, like an excited puppy, excited to explore new adventures. It was the first time I was living out of my mother's clutches, and I don't mean that in a way that she was controlling, but obviously I had a very typical tiger Asian mum, and so she was naturally protective, and being an only child, you can imagine, more so. So as soon as I got to go to university, I was like, freedom, and I met so many wonderful people from university, some of which are still some of my closest friends till this day. But looking back, I realized how naive and vulnerable I was. I wasn't quite prepared for what was about to come my way in the form of a boyfriend. And I think naively, I suppose, I expected people of my age just to all be cool and sane and normal, and I just thought everyone would think like me, but clearly not. My university was in a very isolated campus, so I was more concerned about the dangers that were lurking outside as opposed to the danger that was about to present itself to me in the form of a fictitious loving relationship. Not that long into my journey of being in my first year of uni, I met a guy, and he wasn't my type at first. Very quirky, very unusual. I found him slightly weird, but quite quickly he made his way into my heart and my attention, because there was something quite even though he was quite short, there's something quite manly about him in his character. He was well travelled, he was well versed, he spoke multiple languages, he could cook. There was just something so grown up about him, and I really fell for that. He really showered me with compliments. He knew what to say to worm his way into my heart, and it worked. So I would say the initial 6 months or so of our relationship, we were blissfully happy, like every cliche relationship in the beginning, where it's that honeymoon period, and I couldn't have been happier. Slowly he started to present with some concerning behavior, and instead of taking that as warning signs and seeing the red flags, I was completely blinded by my supposed love for him, and I just ignored it. But these red flags were things like him being very controlling, being pretty possessive, wanting to know where I was, who I was with, and getting easily upset and jealous over the most smallest things. So one example of that is one time we were at a student union night, and a kind of mutual friend, a guy, started dancing with me, but not in a grinding kind of way, just a very platonic, fun way. And unbeknownst to me, he had approached my boyfriend at the time saying, "Oh, your girlfriend's so hot." That night when we were making our way home, my ex gave me grief over that comment, and instead of being upset at the guy that made the comment, he was really angry at me, asking me what I had done to make him say that. He kept asking, But what did you do to make him say that? How must have you have acted, or how must have you have danced for him to say that? Were you flirting with him? So at first I took it and mistook it for like normal jealousy that you get in a relationship, and just said, I explained that nothing happened. We were just dancing platonically. We weren't even touching each other. I didn't even know he had said that to you until you told me. So that was sort of like one of the first incidents, and we moved on from that. But gradually his jealousy became a bigger thing. But in the middle of that, our relationship was growing. I was, in my naive mind, thinking that I was falling in love with him. He was telling me that he was falling in love with me, and I felt like I could see a future with him, to the point where I even introduced him to my mum, and that doesn't always happen because my mum is so precious to me. I brought him to my family home during one of the university holidays, and he even stayed the night. He met my mum, spent some time with her, and my mum really made an effort with him as well. He met some of my closest friends as well. He met my best friend at the time, who wasn't at the same university. She was at a different university, but she was my friend from home. If I were to be completely honest, a few of my friends sort of saw through him and said there's something about him that I don't quite like. But at the time, they didn't really have a basis to say that. It was just more of a gut feeling, and I guess I didn't really want to hear it either. But as a person, he came across very confident, very well educated, well spoken, very charming, very sociable. He was an extremely sociable character. He worked as a photographer, and he was quite ambitious. He even had his own website, and he even took photographs of the student union. He knew how to mingle. He knew how to win people over. So I'm telling you this for a reason, because it will come into play later on in the story. I trusted him, and at the time thought I loved him enough to tell him about a secret of mine that was, and still is, very harrowing to me. It's something that happened in my past, and it's something that only the closest of friends and family know. But at the time, it was a secret that not even my parents knew, because I just knew how harrowing it would be for them. And when I told him, it was to say, look, this is my past, and I just want you to know. My parents don't know, but I want to let you know, because we're in a loving, safe, trustworthy relationship, so it's only right that you know. And initially he took it well, or seemingly well, said he would be there for me, and then came all the problems. So once he knew my secret, that was it. Everything went downhill. Every single time we had an argument, he became more and more jealous, more and more accusatory, and it was always like, who are you? If I spent time away from him, it was always like, who are you with? Which boy are you with? It was very accusatory. It was very paranoid, and it was so bad. He became obsessed with the fact that I was cheating on him, and it became so bad that at one point I was with a really good friend of mine, and we were at karaoke, and he was accusing me of being with a guy at that very moment, cheating on him. And at that point I'd had enough, and had to film myself with my friend at karaoke singing. Otherwise he wouldn't have believed us. And again, they should have been warning signs, and slowly they did become red flags for me. But the second that I decided that, okay, this guy is not healthy for me, there's something quite toxic about this guy, and the time that I decided to walk away is literally when shit hit the fan. When he realised that I wanted to break up with him, he started to use my harrowing secret against me. And he started saying that he was going to tell people. I can't tell you how terrified that made me, and as a result, how much power that gave him. So many times that I would threaten to walk away from him, split up with him, I went back. Partly because I thought I loved him, and partly because I was terrified he would act upon his threat to tell people about my secret. But even so, all that time, I hoped deep down in my heart that he wasn't that person, and that it was just an empty threat. Something which I later found out to not be the case. He would continue to threaten me every time we had down with our relationship. He would threaten to accuse me, call me every name under the sun, things that I can't even repeat on camera. And yet he had a very close female friend that he would hang around with all the time. And one time I found some questionable photographs on his camera, but it was okay for him to act like that, and yet he was accusing me falsely of doing things behind his back, which was then giving him ammunition, or supposed ammunition, to fire threats at me to reveal my secret. One day I decided that I'd had enough. I genuinely had enough, and I wasn't going to take any more. So I told him I'm breaking up with him, and that's it. And that time was because an argument that we had was so bad. This was in my second year of uni, that it resulted in a panic attack and the paramedic, the ambulance being called. I, in the middle of the argument, couldn't breathe, and I fell on the floor, and that was the first panic attack I'd ever had, and the second one in my entire life. And even then, it didn't stop his behaviour. It took the commotion of our argument and the noise that it created in our halls for a friend who lived down the hall to then call the ambulance. He didn't, even though I was struggling to breathe. And that's when I decided, that was like one of many things that just amounted me to making a firm decision. I don't want to be with this guy anymore. Whilst I was busy ignoring him, he continued to threaten me to reveal my secret. Without exaggerating, he would literally send me, like, I don't know, 50 plus text messages a day without me responding. He would miscall me at least 40 times. He would leave a voicemail however many times. And the text messages, again without exaggerating, would consist of 1 minute saying, please don't do this to me, Deborah, you know how much I love you, I need you in my life, please don't do this to me. I wouldn't respond, and literally 5 minutes later he would say, you're such a fucking whore, I want you to die. To then literally 5 minutes later messaging me again saying, I'm so sorry baby, I didn't mean that, I need you in my life. To then an hour later messaging me again saying, you're a slut and you deserve to be raped. And like I said, a lot of these things that I'm saying are things that I can repeat on camera. There are so many more things that he said to me that I cannot repeat on camera. It was so hard to not respond at times. He literally made every personal attack that he could on me. He commented about the fact that I came from humble beginnings and called me every name under the sun about that. He mocked me. He tried to humiliate what my parents did. And by the way, my mum was a nurse and a carer at one point. So he mocked all of that because he thought he came from like middle class background. He mocked my best friend who he had met, saying that she was a chav and she was working class and that she wouldn't amount to anything. So he literally broke me down in every single way possible where he could make a personal attack. In the end, where I thought that his threat was empty in telling my parents, he carried out his threat. So one day I received a call from my mum whilst I was at university, and she said, "Deborah, I've received a letter from your boyfriend, and he said some really horrible things. I need to know that this is not true. Please tell me this is not true." And at the time, I wasn't ready to deal with it. I wasn't ready to confront it. I didn't want to speak to my mum about it, and I lied, saying it wasn't true. And after quite a while, she finally dropped it. And I thought that was that. I thought surely he wouldn't be the kind of monster to raise it again just to get attention from me. But I was wrong. A couple of months later, when he realised it didn't have the effect that he wanted, he sent home another letter to my mum, detailing everything that I had told her about my harrowing secret, and a separate letter to my stepfather on the same thing. He had my home address because I had introduced him to my family. So where I had done something to bring him closer into my life and to the people that I love, he used against me. I found out about the second letter when I went home for the summer holidays, and I will never forget that day. My mum was driving me home, where she had picked me up so that I could bring some of my belongings and suitcase home, and on the drive home she asked me if it was true. And this time I didn't want to lie to her. I just couldn't lie to her a second time over something so big. So I told her we'd talk about it when we got home. When I said that, she realised it was true. She cried all the way home. When we got home, I told her everything. And she reacted the way that I knew she would. It completely broke her. And I think we both cried for the whole day. The whole day. We cried for the whole day. I will never forget that day. After that, when I thought the worst was over, he posted my secret on his main Facebook profile, because at the time there wasn't such a thing as Instagram. So all the rage was Facebook. Facebook was all the rage, and he posted it on his main page for all of our university friends, all his contacts to see. He wrote my secret on his page with my name in full, first name, surname, in capital letters. As if that wasn't shocking or horrific enough, I had to witness and read the comments from other people. The majority, I guess, were shocked and was asking him what this is about. Some, very few, told him, "This is not right, you don't do this, this is not acceptable." And some, sickeningly, thought it was some kind of like gossip and were really excited and commenting like, "Ooh, tell me more," over some tragedy that happened in my life. Imagine, this was all in public, where I could read everything, every single comment about me and my secret. After that, and where I continued to ignore him, he then wrote my secret on the landing page of his website, again in capital letters, again at the top of the page, again with my full name, first and last name, for everybody to see when they entered his website. I can't tell you how many times during that period dark period of my life that I wanted to commit suicide. It was such a dark period in my life, and my innermost personal, most harrowing secret, which at first was personal and private, that only people I trusted and loved knew, suddenly was out, not only to my parents, where I didn't make the choice or decision to tell them, but to also so many people at my university. At the time, it felt like everyone was looking at me, pointing their finger at me, judging me, talking about me behind my back. If until now my story sounds crazy, it's because it is, and it's because it was. And even then, the story doesn't end there. I'm obviously summarizing everything in a nutshell, but there were moments where he even followed me because I refused to speak to him. At the time, I was doing a work placement at university. He knew through our relationship what shifts I was on, what days I would work, what time I would leave, what train I would get from our local station, and what sort of approximate time I would arrive back to the local station to go back to university. Information that should be kind of normal knowledge in a loving relationship, again, he used as a weapon against me. There were several occasions where I would rock up to the train station on a Monday morning. Because of the time that I was heading into work, it was the peak of rush hour time. He would try and talk to me. He'll say, "Please, baby, I'm so sorry. Please talk to me. Please talk to me. Please, 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 please talk to me." Constantly. This is all I would get. And I'd be standing there ignoring him. I'm the kind of person that, as much as I have a public channel, when I'm out, I'm not an attention seeker. I don't like to draw attention to myself. I like to keep myself to myself. I'm quite private. I like to keep it that way. So you can only imagine where he was going, "Please, baby, please talk to me, please, please, please," on a very quiet platform by the way, very short platform where lots of people are standing waiting for the train. Everything's within earshot. You know, British people, they don't really talk to one another when they're commuting. So everyone's in complete silence. It's first thing in the morning. And all they hear is this guy begging his girlfriend, "Please, please, 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 please talk to me." And I'm standing there silently, just wanting the ground to swallow me up. To the point where the train would then arrive. And you know how a group of people will cram towards one door so that they can get on, but each door will be quite full of people. I'm talking like 15 people plus. And at that moment where people crowded at the door, and the doors would open, and one foot would literally go onto the train, and he realized that I still wasn't going to speak to him, and he had lost that particular battle, he would literally shout out and say my secret again whilst 15 people were cramming onto a train. It was as shocking as it sounds. In fact, it was worse. I can't even remember the expressions of the people that I got on the train with who would have heard my secret. And in some ways, I think I've blocked it out of my memory because it's just too painful to remember. And I remember I would stand at the door so that I wouldn't have to face those very same people. Or sometimes I would literally sink to the floor and bawl my eyes out quietly. There were occasions where I would leave my work placement, which happened to be a hospital, and he would be waiting for me because he knew what time my shift ended. And it would be the same thing. "Please talk to me, please talk to me, please talk to me," whilst we were on the street. Sometimes I would manage to get away from him quickly, and all I would hear in the distance is, "You fucking bitch," because I refused to speak to him. There were times where I would come out of work and be extremely apprehensive and almost be cautious looking around behind my shoulder all the time because I felt like he was going to be there. And I remember one particular occasion where I was really jumpy and I was expecting him to be there, but he wasn't. And I remember being like, almost like, I can't even tell you about the relief and just the enormous relief that washed through my body when I realised he wasn't there. Until I got the train home, arrived at my local station and found that he was waiting for me there instead. I refused to talk to him, ignored him yet again, jumped straight into a taxi to go to campus. He jumped into the next taxi, followed me back. I pretty much ran to my accommodation, him following me very closely behind, to the point where I then quickly said to security, who happened to be on shift that day, my ex is coming, can you please stop him from coming and following me upstairs? And security did that day. But then as a result of me doing that and embarrassing him, he ended up telling security some lies about me and telling him how much of a disturbed, warped person I was, and again started talking about all my past and everything else that came with it. He started spreading rumours about me around university. I eventually stopped going to lectures. Like I said, I was thinking of suicide constantly. Ironically, the one thing that stopped me from doing it was knowing that it wouldn't stop him. I felt like if I committed suicide, he wouldn't be remorseful about his actions or his words or the pain that he had caused me. He would literally just spread further rumours about me, and in that instance I wouldn't be around to even defend myself. So the only thing that stopped me from committing suicide during that time was the thought that he would be worse when I was dead than when I was alive. And the fact that I just wouldn't be able to defend myself. Eventually, I decided to seek help and I went to counselling. Counselling and therapy was always something I'd been against growing up, even though I had been through a lot, just because I was very much that person that felt very negative about therapy. I was like, well, what's it going to do? What's it going to change? You're talking to a stranger who's paid to listen to you, who doesn't really care about your problems. What are they going to do? How can they change my life, you know? I was very much of that mind frame. But he pushed me so much, so far, so hard. At that time, I think I went to hell and back. I eventually saw a therapist, and at first I was told that we only do several, I think it was maximum of like 6 sessions, 6 hours for students, because it's like it was like funded by the university, if that makes sense, perhaps the NHS. So they offered a free therapy for students, but in order to be able to accommodate everyone who needed the service, they offered a maximum of only 6. I still remember the first day that I sat down with a therapist, and I just felt so awkward, like I didn't even know where to start with my story. And I ended up blurting out everything in relation to my ex, what he'd put me through, and my secret. And I remember the therapist looking at me and saying, the 6-session rule does not apply to you. You can come back as many times as you like, as many times as you feel like you need the service. The service will always be open to you. And when she said that, I think it's the first time that it really hit me. Wow, I must be going through a lot in order for them to say that to me. Where I had stopped attending lectures, I received a warning letter from like the senior lecturer, who said that if I continue to stop attending lectures, I would be kicked off my course. I subsequently made a call to her, And initially, though she was quite frosty with me, I ended up explaining a little bit of my situation with my ex. And before long, she immediately softened up and offered me lots of help and advice. She was amazing. And she offered me a lot of advice on law, domestic violence. She's the one that turned to me and said, "You realise you are in a domestic violence relationship." And I said, "No, but I'm not being hit. I'm not facing physical assault." And she said, "No, Deborah, you are. He is mentally and emotionally abusing you. You need to get an injunction out against him." But I didn't. I know it's so easy for people to say, "Oh, but you could have got an injunction out against him." The irony is I used to work in social work, and I knew that injunctions meant absolutely nothing in this country, and they still don't. They don't protect women. They protect women in theory, yes. They don't protect women in reality. So many women who have been stalked, killed, abused, have had an injunction out against their partner, and it did nothing to save them. So from experience, I knew that an injunction wouldn't do anything. And in fact, I felt that an injunction would just spur my ex on more to get revenge. There were times I so badly wished that he would just hit me, that he would leave bruises and marks on me. There were times I prayed for him to stab me, because then I felt like at least I would have evidence that he's hurt me. Then I would have something to go to the police about. But in truth, I was scared shitless. I was scared. I knew that the only way he would leave me alone is if he found a new woman, a new love interest. And I remember the time when I had realised that he'd stopped contacting me, and it had been a while. And I remember the feeling of relief, but thinking, it's too good to be true. It can't be true. He's going to lull me into a full sense of security, and I'll be happy and relaxed for the first time in a long, long time. And then suddenly he'll appear out of the blue and just start haunting me again. But he didn't. He just suddenly stopped one day out of the blue. And it's only, I think, 6 months later, when I went on a holiday with my friends, a group trip, that I learnt that he had a new girlfriend. And everything then clicked into place. She then subsequently contacted me via private message on Facebook, not that long after our group trip, and told me that he was being possessive, aggressive, and even biting her in the relationship. She said she had heard some stuff about our relationship, and if I could give her any sort of advice or help. You don't understand how conflicted I felt about it. On one hand, I didn't even want to reply. I just didn't want anything more to do with my ex. And I felt like if I said anything, and it was even a potential perhaps set up, he would come after me with vengeance, with venom, 10 times stronger venom, because that's the kind of person that he was. In the end, I replied saying, yes, it was true about me and him. And I just said to her, I'm so sorry for what's happening to you. You need to get help. But unfortunately, I'm not willing to get involved anymore in this situation just because I'm really scared. She said she understood, thanked me for responding in the first place, and that was it. And I don't know what happened since. The scary thing is, with me, he never bit me. And with me, we'd always have arguments, and I'd want to leave the room. That was my thing. It was always the flight mode, not the fight mode. And he would always want to fight. He'd always try to keep me in the room. And sometimes the only way he could do that was by locking the door and or holding my wrists. And many, many, many a times I actually had bruises on my wrists because he was holding me so tight so that I couldn't leave. Other than that, he didn't hit me, and he certainly never bit me. So the fact that he did this in his new relationship, to me, meant that he had amped it up and gone one step further. I'd even heard one rumour actually, about him and an ex at his old school before university. And I don't even remember exactly what it was, but I remember at the time thinking, that's a bit weird, like that's a bit concerning. But because it was a rumour, it was baseless at the time. But in hindsight, I realised it's a pattern of behaviour, and he is clearly an obsessive, controlling, possessive person who likes to control women, who likes to make them feel fearful. But ironically for him, the moment that he told my secret to the world, literally to the world, is the moment that he lost his power over me. The moment that I decided to tell my mum about my secret, is the moment that he lost his hold over me. He impacted my mental health so much that even through difficult times in my life, and even with my past experiences, as harrowing as they were, I didn't have very many nightmares. Due to my ex's behaviour towards me and against me, I suffered from reoccurring dreams every night. And it would always be the same theme, whereby I would be walking along somewhere in the street, always be a different location, and I would always spot my ex first. And every single time in my dream, I would hide. I would either duck under something, or I would run into a corner, into a shop or something to hide. And every single time in my dream, my ex spotted me. He had traumatized me so much that I had reoccurring dreams about him constantly hunting me down. So it was like in my waking and even in my unconscious phase where I was sleeping, he was completely consuming me and my life and my mental health and my thoughts. Whilst I was going through all of this, I had friends offering to beat him up. I had male friends offering to step in and sort him out. But I knew somehow that he would twist things, he would then become the victim, and I didn't want to go down that avenue. During this time, I really found out who my true friends were. So many people that I thought were friends or close acquaintances believed what my ex said and turned their back on me when I needed them the most. During this time, I had a really good friend who offered for me to come to America and stay with them and start anew. And trust me when I say that that was so tempting to do, because I love the States and I just wanted to start anew. I just wanted to completely start anew. I just wanted to get away from everything. And I knew by doing that, I could drown it all out. But I didn't want to run away from it all. I didn't want to be a coward. I felt like in that situation, if I ran from that situation, I would always be running away from situations in my life. And as hard as it was, I stayed. I went back to my lectures. I tried to drown out all the negativity, the gossip, the back-talking, backstabbing, everything. Tried to drown out everything. Tried to focus on my friends, the very few friends who stood by me and tried to support me through this. And my faith in God really got me through some tough times. In the end, I ended up finishing my university degree. I passed. Against all the odds, I managed to pass. Maybe not with the grades that I had hoped for, but the main thing was that I passed and I got a degree. He didn't succeed at bringing me down so much that I had to leave university, or that I didn't get a degree because of him. And I'm so proud of myself that I managed to push through and complete my university degree, because otherwise, I think throughout all my life, I'd have had A, trauma of going back to university to complete the degree, and B, I would forever be thinking I didn't ever get to finish my degree because of him, and it would have been a story attached to me. He would always somehow permanently be attached to me because of that. So I'm glad I managed to push through, finish it, no matter how hard it was. Around 5 years later, I got married. I met my wonderful husband. He really restored my faith in men a lot. I remember not long after my wedding, I went for lunch with my really good friend. And after lunch we were strolling on the street, and I remember bumping into my ex on the street, but we were going the opposite direction, but we had to cross one another. And I still remember that moment where I saw him and the fear of God. I couldn't believe that after 5 years, he somehow still had that impact on me. And I just couldn't wait to get away from him. We didn't exchange words, we didn't say hello, obviously. But the thing that struck me the most was the smirk. As we walked past each other, he smirked at me. That one smirk said 1,000 words, but mainly it said, I am not sorry. I am not remorseful for the fact that I almost gave you a nervous breakdown. I am not sorry for the pain that I caused you, or for the devastation I brought to your life and your family's life. That smirk said so many things. I haven't sought revenge. I'm not a revengeful type of person. My faith teaches me to forgive others. I will be real. It's hard to forgive someone when they're not sorry. And as of yet, till this present day, I've yet to receive an acknowledgement or sorry or anything from him. And to be honest, in some way, I'd rather I never heard from him ever again. But I've obviously tried to get on with my life, and I have moved on with my life. But I wanted to share this story with you because, like I said, it's a part of who I am today. Having been dragged to the lowest of lows, it can only make you a stronger person. So what I want to say, girls, and anyone watching this, is you are not alone. If you have had, or hopefully not, but are in an abusive relationship, you can come out of it like I did. It might not be easy. Initially, you might feel really fearful of the consequences, but if you stick to your principles, you can get out of it. But you mustn't isolate from the people that love you, like your family and your friends. Cherish those who are there for you through every high, but more importantly, every low. I hope by listening to my story that it's somehow relatable to some of you who are watching this. I hope it's comforting to know that there can be a positive outcome after all of this. And I really believe that what doesn't kill you definitely makes you stronger. So I realised that this was a longer video than normal, but I really wanted to share this story. I will be doing more kind of real talks about different things, and obviously if there's anything that you want to suggest, then please feel free to suggest it. I'll be more than happy to take on your feedback. I really appreciate you listening to my story. Obviously it was much longer, but I've managed to cut it down and try and summarize everything. But there was so much more that happened, and so much more pain that was caused than I've shared with you on this video. And we women, we're very strong beings. We're very strong beings. I just want to give a little shout out and dedicate this video to the friends that stuck by me during this time, no matter how difficult it was to hear everything, witness everything. Thank you for believing me. Thank you for being there for me. I'll be seeing you on the next video. Thank you so much again, and stay safe, everyone.